Hey, it's Eric here. This comment or this post is really came from a conversation that I had today with someone that asked me, "Hey, Eric, why do people fail?" And so, before I get into that, he was talking to me because he was working with somebody else who I didn't know who they were, but he started to tell me. He started to ask them some questions about some different franchises, and he could tell the person clearly didn't know anything about the franchises except what can be read in a magazine or a sheet of paper in front of them. Didn't have any idea about the leadership, didn't have any idea about the stuff that a really good consultant should know about when they talk about franchises. And a really good consultant should be very upfront with you and tell you that they don't know about stuff. I work with franchises all the time that I'm just starting to work with them. And if you've ever worked with me and you are getting introduced to a franchise like this, you'll hear me really clearly tell you up front, this is a new one for me. So this is us learning together. Buyer beware on stuff like that. But if you don't have someone warning you buyer beware, then you really need to wonder if you're working with the right person. But back to this thing that someone asked me about failing, and I want to hit it because I think it's important. And as conversations came up throughout the day, as I was talking to some existing franchisees that are looking at expanding, the same things came up in my conversation with him. And so I thought, gosh, I probably need to get this out there. But if you found yourself in that point where you might not be looking at the franchises that you probably should be looking at, and you want to talk to me, just go to talkwitheric.com, ERIK, talkwitheric.com, and we can set up a time to talk. But the easiest way to fail, or the things that you should do to avoid failure, is a more positive spin on the same question. Number one, if it's a retail-based concept, real estate is absolutely critical. And that goes into territory that you buy, having retail space that's available. And I have some videos coming out in a little bit that I did with some people that are doing some site selection for me, and they're actually looking at some of the stuff. I am looking at a particular area in Denver, and I really want to get in there. It's the best place for me to get into out of the 6 territories that I own. But like I knew, and they told me, Eric, we might get in there this year, it might be next year, and it might be the following year because nothing's available. It's so hard to get in there, but once it opens up, then you're in. This is a reason I like to buy 3 territories or more in a particular market, because it gives me maximum flexibility. The number one market, really hard to get into. I'll go into outlying markets and find some good real estate in there. So the number one thing to avoid before you even open up is finding the best stuff. I was talking to a friend of mine that's looking to buy a different franchise in a different state than he currently owns, but in the same type of industry. And he said, Eric, the most common mistake that I see people make in this particular franchise that he's in right now is getting the wrong location. He said they opt for cheaper versus better. And he said, in some places that might work, but in this one, it doesn't. You want to have a very good location. Don't sacrifice a lot more customers for a little bit more money on a location. That's his point in this particular franchise. So you got to know the franchise, and you've got to do what they say, and you need to make sure that they know what they're saying, so then you can follow actually really good advice. And you're talking to franchisees like him that will tell you this is a mistake that you should not make. So don't make a mistake getting into the wrong real estate. Don't make a mistake before that by just being very narrow in your search. Try to get as much area as you can as your risk tolerance allows. So let's say you get a good location, you're ready to go. Then it's time to hire somebody. That person that you're going to hire is critical as well. And you'll probably make some mistakes. I mean, if you're like me, human, and make mistakes, you might make some mistakes hiring, because I certainly have. The key is to quickly identify those mistakes, or even better is understand who you're hiring, and don't be fooled thinking they can do everything perfectly, because they probably can't. If I'm hiring for a position of, like, say it's a general manager or manager over one location, and I want that person to do everything. Well, I want them to do everything. There are people out there that probably can do everything, but this person's probably better at certain things than others. If they're really good at selling or pre-sales or dealing with a customer and helping them understand the customer, what the customer experience really should be like, and closing them to become a member or become a customer, or whatever that end of that process looks like, if they're really good at that, but they're not good at some other ends of the marketing, if they need to be out facing the community and they're not good at that, we'll hire somebody that can be out facing the community, that can be out marketing. Or if you got someone that you've hired and they are really good at being out the face of the community, but they're not really good in front of customers closing the sale once they come in through your marketing efforts, then hire somebody to support them in that. Don't get rid of the first person just because they can't do everything that you want, but start to identify what they're really good at, what they enjoy, and how they can excel in that, and then start hiring around them so you can build a really good team. So those are the two things, and it's pretty simple at the end of the day if you really think about it, but in real life, it's not always that easy, especially when it comes to the people part of it. The mistake that people make on the front end with the real estate, they just don't ask enough questions in terms of talking to other franchisees, what they're looking for and whatnot. They only rely on their real estate person, or they only rely on what the franchisor is telling them. Rely on that stuff, but then go ask franchisees what they're experiencing out there as well. And then when it comes to hiring, I've made some great hires and I've made some poor hires. And you quickly have to identify if you've made the wrong hire, and don't always just put it on them, the person that you hired. You hired the wrong person. I've hired the wrong person. I take responsibility for that, and then go hire the right person. Learn from those mistakes. So anyway, hope you found it helpful. If you ever want to talk to me, talkwitheric.com.